Hello guys, this is your friend and we are back with a new fanfic. Which is What If Naruto and Sensei Love with Each Other, Part 1, Naruto X Tsunade. And if you enjoy this fanfic then please press the like button and subscribe to my channel for more fanfic like this. And now let's start the fanfic. 307 Chapter 1. Meeting a New Sensei. Tsunade Senju was relaxing in the hot springs in Konoha. She never thought that she would be back in this place after she lost all that she has, but Shizune wanted to visit. How could she say no to the person that has been with her since her fiancé and Shizune's uncle, Dan, died during the Second Shinobi World War? She stayed for varying periods of time, but never fully resided in Konoha, to visit her cousin Kushina. However, after she died 13 years ago, she had no one left in her family aside from Shizune, who could be considered her daughter at this point, not just her apprentice. Nevertheless, she was back in Konoha and she wanted to keep this quiet. The last thing she needed was her sensei, Sarutobi H. Hiruzen the Sandaime Hokage, to find out she was here and nag her to convince her to stay. She brought a saucer of sake to her lips to continue to enjoy the warm water of the springs. Her musings were brought to an end by some loud shouting that was going on beyond the wall that separated the springs from the outside world. What truly caught her attention, however, was the word, pervert, that was being shouted out. Though she didn't want to reveal herself, she could not stand perverts, especially if they tried to peek on her like her former teammate Jiraiya. She got out of the water and wrapped herself in a towel before making her way outside to punish the peeping Tom. Naruto Uzumaki was having a bad day. First, his sensei ditched him for Sasuke Tem, saying that he needed his help more. Sure, Gaara was strong, shockingly so. I mean, the punishment that he took from bushy brows who battered him around the preliminary arena was outrageous, but he needed help too. Neji had shown that he is more than willing to kill fellow Konoha shinobi. At least Gaara has the excuse that he was fighting a foreign shinobi. Neji went mad just because he didn't like the other person's views, and knowing his luck, Neji would do just that. That's why he needed help. But what does he get? He gets passed on to some closet pervert that he beat with a single jutsu that wasn't even that cool. He was taken to the hot spring so he could learn how to walk on water, but ever since the second stage of the Chunin exams and that long-tongued Kusa Kunoichi had hit him where his seal was, controlling his chakra became really difficult. Maybe he should have said something. Well, that was for later. Now his new sensei was just knocked out by some long, white-haired pervert that summoned a frog that used its tongue to knock him out. Hey, what do you think you are doing, you pervert? Who the heck are you? He shouted. The man responded by doing a weird kabuki dance. Who, me? I am known as the man that the ladies squeal upon seeing, the one that all men idolize and wish to be. I am known as one of the greatest shinobi to ever live. I am known as the Gamma Sennin Jiraiya. He proclaimed from the top of his toad. Gamma Sennin? Questioned a confused Naruto. Exactly, he stated as he dismissed the large orange toad. Hey, pervy sage, what are you going to do about this? Shouted an exacerbated Naruto while pointing at the man who was supposed to teach him for the 1 month before the finals of the Chunin exams. What were you doing anyway? The man began digging around in his pale green kimono top, saying, I was getting inspiration. I'm a writer for a brilliant novel. As he said this, he pulled out a familiar orange book that Naruto had always seen Kakashi-sensei reading. Oh, that's, stated Naruto. Oh ho, you know this book, do you? I've gotten quite famous here, he, thought the man with a wide grin. That's not a novel. That's some perverted piece of crap, you pervert, shouted a now angry Naruto. The man rushed forward to get into Naruto's face. Fool. I'm not just a pervert. I'm a super pervert. The man bellowed to the heavens. More importantly, what are you going to? Before any more could be said, the man he was arguing with was struck square in the jaw and was launched clear into the horizon that was accompanied by a battle cry. The wind kicked up from the strike, forcing Naruto to cover his face with his arms, which nearly pushed Naruto to his butt. He turned to see who struck the pervy sage to see a woman, fair-skinned woman of average height with hazel eyes and a curvaceous figure with the largest bust he had ever seen that had some kind of green crystal gem necklace on a black cord, that had a pearl on each side of the gem, nestled between th.m. with smooth legs and long blonde hair that fell almost to her mid-back while wearing nothing more than a bath towel to cover herself. He could also see that her fingernails and toenails had bright red nail polish on them. All in all, she was probably the most beautiful woman he had ever laid eyes on, even more so than Sakura-chan and Haku. Though that last one always gave him chills when he thought back on the raven-haired boy. Once Tsunade had sent the person, who may have been Jiraiya, to the horizon, she turned to the person standing next to her. She was shocked, though she didn't show it, to see a boy with many features that reminded her of Minato in looks with Kushina's face. No way, she thought. A second later the boy seemed like he was going to speak. If he was speaking with Jiraiya, the boy would undoubtedly be a pervert himself, so she prepared to knock the boy out until he spoke. Whoa, that was so cool. You defeated the man who defeated my sensei in a single hit. You even sent him flying. That's so cool. He nearly shouted, but his enthusiasm seemed to remind her of someone she didn't want to remember. Hey, cool it, Gaki. Quit bouncing around. Naruto turned to her with a glare. Hey, my name is not Gaki. It's Naruto Uzumaki and I'm going to be Hokage. And since you beat the guy that beat my sensei, you should be the one that trains me for the Chunin exams. The words the boy spoke struck another chord in Tsunade's heart. Over this boy she saw an image of her little brother who this boy, Naruto, bore a striking resemblance to. Tsunade seized up for a moment before regaining her composure. No, was all she said as she turned and began making her way back to the hot spring. Naruto looked shocked before he spoke again. What? But you have too. That pervert knocked out the guy my sensei passed me off to and you beat the pervert, so clearly you have to train me. Plus, you are super strong, Oba-san. Once more some of the words the boy spoke began striking chords within her heart. She stopped walking and asked the boy without looking back to meet his face, Hey Gaki, who are your parents? At this question, Naruto's mood fell. He looked down at the ground before he answered. I don't know. I'm an orphan, he stated quietly. And if a switch had flipped he began talking rather loudly again, but that's okay because I'm still going to be Hokage so that people will look up to me and see me, he proclaimed. Pieces in her mind were falling into place. If this boy was as old as she thought he was, then maybe, just maybe. Wait here boy, I'll be right back. Without waiting for a reply, she walked back into the hot spring to change and collect Shizune and Taunton. Naruto on the other hand was dumbstruck. Was this lady going to train him? Is this the first person who is willing to train him simply because he asked? Hope welled within him. He made sure to plant himself in the spot he was at and wait for the beautiful and strong Oba-san to come back. Tsunade meanwhile was plagued by thoughts. Maybe he wouldn't have died if he was trained better. Maybe he would have lived if he had a better sensei, thought Tsunade as she re-entered the spring. She located Shizune giving Taunton a bath in one of the corners of the pool. When she reached her location, she addressed her apprentice daughter. Shizune, when you are done, we are going to meet someone who is waiting outside, and no, it is not Sarutobi-sensei. As Tsunade walked away, Shizune was stunned. But my lady, if you don't mind me asking, who are we going to meet? Asked her apprentice. That, said Tsunade as she turned to freshen up, is what I aim to find out. Naruto waited patiently for the beautiful Oba-san to come out of the hot spring. He was getting antsy despite the little amount of time that had passed since she had left. Not being used to many people showing him kindness, he was always weary until they showed they weren't going to treat him like the villagers. To his surprise, the woman came back. She came out in a gray, sleeveless kimono blouse with a broad, dark bluish-gray obi that held it closed, bluish-gray capri pants, open-toed, strapped black sandals with a pronounced heel and a grass-green obi that had the kanji for gamble on the back inside a red circle. Following her was another fair-skinned woman who was slightly shorter than the blonde, same style sandal though without the pronounced heel. She had straight, shoulder-length black hair with onyx eyes, dressed in a bluish-black kimono with white collar that was held closed by a violet obi. She also appeared to have a mesh armor shirt underneath along with a red collar. In her arms was a small pig that had red vest and a pearl necklace. Glad to see you still waiting, Tsunade told him. Now before I even consider training you, tell me two things. Do you know who I am? And do you know what it means to be Hokage? Naruto pondered his answers to the questions. Well, you are some kind of super ninja who is super beautiful and super strong, who can beat anyone with a single hit, he said excitedly. The black-haired woman seemed like she was giggling behind her hand at his response. The second one though, that one stumped him. He thought on his answer long and hard. He then thought to what Hokage Gigi had told him long ago. As Hokage, it is my duty to protect this village. Not just the buildings but the people too. I see all the people in the village as my family and I want to protect my family. He also remembered the words Haku had told him when they met in the forest. Do you have someone precious to you? I believe to be truly strong a person must have someone precious to them. Having his answer, he answers the pretty Oba-san. I want to be noticed. I want to be seen as me. Tsunade frowned at his answer and was about to tell him to leave until he continued, I also want to protect my precious people. To do this I need to become stronger so that I can keep them safe. Tsunade and Shizune were shocked by this answer. Tsunade saw an overlay of her brother Nawaki, her grandfather Hashirama, and her fiancé Dan, while Shizune saw Dan over the boy. Tsunade did her best to repress her feelings of seeing her loved ones in this boy. Feelings she had that were not felt since Dan. She thinks back on her thoughts that she had about her little brother back in the spring. If he is family, maybe this one I can keep alive. She thought to herself. Letting out a sigh, fine Gaki, I'll train you, she told him, surprising both the boy and Shizune. My name is Tsunade Senju and this is my apprentice Shizune Kato and I am the world's greatest medic nin, she told him as she sported a confident smirk. Naruto's eyes went wide. He was surprised to hear that this Oba-san with a super punch was a medic like the ones at the hospital. However, I will not train you here. If you are training for the finals then you don't want to do it where your competition can see you, right? Naruto thought about it before nodding along with what she was saying. Yep. He definitely made the right choice in asking this pretty Oba-san to train him. We'll head out of the walls and do your training there. While we walk, I want you to tell me what you were working on and any injury or event that has happened since you started the exams, she told him as she turned to make her way out of the village, Shizune, Taunton and Naruto catching up with her. The three were making their way from the hot spring to training grounds to get out of the village unnoticed. Hey, Naruto, right? Didn't I tell you to tell me about any injuries that you have taken since the exam started, right? Naruto rubbed the back of his head sheepishly, forgetting that she asked him to do that. He was more into the route they were taking. It seemed to be a route that traversed the outskirts of the village, avoiding all the major areas where people like to congregate. It was almost like she didn't want to be seen, though if it was because of him Naruto could understand, though it did sting. Not wanting to bring down the mood, Naruto responded in his usual energetic tone. Well, the first exam was really hard, ya know. It was this test that had all these super hard questions that I didn't know how to answer, he said a little downcast. Though he didn't see it, the two women raised an eyebrow at his explanation. Did he not know he could have cheated, or did he not have a method that he could have used? The two ladies thought as they walked. So, I just didn't answer any question until the last one, which I passed because that scared face proctor couldn't scare me, proclaimed Naruto. Again, both women were surprised by his statement. He passed an information gathering test by not backing down. They both thought, well, he's certainly an interesting one. Seems like a way that Kushina may pass if she wasn't prepared for hers, thought Tsunade, giving her more suspicions as to who his parents are. Then after he explained that we could have cheated, his tone took a drop as he was told that he needed to cheat to pass. But it jumped up again as he continued his tale. this crazy lady that had a coat over some fishnet clothing came bursting through the window saying she was the second proctor. Though I have to admit her entrance was pretty cool, he said with a nod and his arms crossed. What happened next was more of him running his mouth without thinking. Though it's not as cool as pretty Tsunade Oba-san punching someone into the sky. This caused Tsunade to smile softly while Shizune looked on curiously at her master's response. Anyway, she brought us to this place she called the Forest of Death, he said with a shiver. Well, I kinda told her that the place wasn't scary. But then she threw a kunai that cut my cheek and licked the blood, he said with another shiver. Tsunade got a flat look on her face. That is not a good habit. She could end up ingesting something poisonous or toxic if she does that to the wrong person just to intimidate a genin of all people, Tsunade thought with a groan. Then after she licked my cheek, some other lady with this super long tongue, like it was so long she actually used it to hand the crazy proctor her kunai with it, came up behind us with this creepy smile, he said as a chill went down his spine. This bit of news surprised both Tsunade and Shizune. It couldn't have been. The two thought but waited for Naruto to finish his tale before they questioned him about this long-tongued indiv. Idol. Well, after that, we got our scroll since we were supposed to get a heaven and earth scroll to pass then make it to this tower in the center of the forest. When we got a little way into the forest, we had to make a stop, he said with a slight blush as he looked away. Well, I got captured, but it wouldn't have been an issue if he would have fought me fair and square, he said with a huff. Well, after I beat the guy and chased him off, Sasuke Tem said we should get a password. Here his anger grew a bit. Of course, the Tem picked something that he knew I wouldn't remember. After that we were hit with a large wind blast that sent me flying through the forest. When I landed this giant snake ate me, he said with a shudder and a pout. For the other two, however, this made their suspicions grow. If it was Orochimaru, he attacked this boy and his team. I can't believe he survived if it was him. The two thought in unison. After the thing ate me, I made it cough me up by creating so many cage bunshin until it exploded, he bragged. Stood proudly before catching up to the two. After that, I rushed off to find my team. Well, he can certainly be creative, Tsunade thought. Well, when I found my team, that creepy long-tongued lady was wrapped around the tree rushing at Sasuke. With that statement the two laid his suspicions, and Tsunade's growing fear for someone who may be family, were confirmed. He is here, and yet we have yet to be confronted by an Anbu or Sarutobi sensei. Has this village become lax? Questioned Tsunade. Well, to save Sasuke I heroically threw several kunai in front of that freaky long-tongued lady which stopped her. Then for some reason Sasuke wanted to give up our scroll to that freak. I mean, come on. Just because some is stronger than you doesn't mean you give up. I mean, we didn't give up when Kakashi sensei got captured by Zabuza. We came up with a plan and managed to win, so why would this be any different? Tsunade could feel a headache coming from this boy's stupidity, but she figured that if her teammate was disguised, he may not have realized who he was fighting. And if she heard right, he also survived fighting Zabuza Momochi, the demon of Kiri. This boy's luck is insane. Maybe I should bring him with me when I go to a casino next time, she thought as a glint appeared in her eye that didn't go unnoticed by Shizune. Well, before he could give up our scroll, I caught it and punched him in the face. Then the freak summoned another large snake that slammed its head down on the branch we were standing on before throwing me up into another one. Well, it tried to eat me. That was when I got angry and punched the snake. I actually bruised its nose. With one punch. Kind of like you, Oba-san, Naruto proclaimed. So, he's the boy Minato sealed the Kyuubi into. Well, I know he was selfless and Kushina was due around that time. There is one true way to be sure, but I won't know until his chakra control improves. Also, that sounds like what happened when Kushina was younger. When she got angry, she drew on the Kyuubi's chakra, even if it was by accident. Tsunade thought. Well, after fighting with the giant snake, it attacked a frozen Sasuke, like a coward. To save him I shielded him with my back while stabbing it with two kunai in the nose where I called him a scaredy cat, because he refused to fight. After that, the freaky tongue lady used her long tongue to wrap me up. She then used this jutsu, a 5-something seal, and slammed it into my stomach, then I passed out. If he still has the seal on, it's amazing that he can even move, though knowing how stubborn Kushina was, she would force Herschel F to continue on no matter her injuries, she thought with a fond smile. Well, after I woke up, we made our way to the tower, which we barely made it to. After that we fought in the preliminaries, as I guess there were too many of us for the finals. Quote. At this, Tsunade interrupted him. Listen, kid, I know that you'll probably want to tell me all about your friends, but I'm training you, not them. So, tell me if you have any injuries still and if that seal is still on you. Nodding his head, Naruto continued his tale. Well, even though I fought Kiba and he got some lucky hits in, I heal up pretty fast, so I don't think anything is wrong. Tsunade raised an eyebrow. Did you not get checked out at the hospital? Naruto looked down at the question, which surprised the two women. I don't like hospitals too much, I haven't had the best time there, he told them cryptically. If what happened I suspect did, then the staff has certainly fallen in quality since I ran the place, Tsunade thought angrily. As for the seal, well, I still haven't told anyone. Actually, you're the first people I've told. Not even my sensei knows, he told them, half embarrassed, half sad. When Sasuke was injured, Kakashi sensei immediately checked up on the Tem. Even took him to the hospital after his fight. Even after his own fight, he didn't ask if he was okay. Sure, he healed fast, but it would have been nice to show he cared. So, he passed the preliminaries despite having a seal that basically made molding chakra impossible. Well, I'll give him this, he certainly is tough and never gives up. Every time he seems to get put in a bad situation, he doesn't quit. Hopefully this won't backfire for him, Tsunade thought. Shizune had her own thoughts on the matter. He reminds me of how Tsunade-sama described the Shodai when he was alive. Maybe he can help heal the wounds in Tsunade-sama's heart. We're here, Tsunade told the group. Naruto looked around and saw that they were next to a riverbed in the forest that was bordered by a heavily rocky bank on each side. There appeared to be some large boulders and a wide variety of plants near the trees. He turned his attention back to Tsunade. So, before we get to your training, there are going to be a few things we have to do. First, you are going to tell me what it is your last sensei was having you work on. Second, I am going to give you a full medical checkup to make sure you have no lasting injuries you may not know about, and third, I am going to remove that seal you have on you. Before you ask how, my grandmother was a seal mistress and taught me quite a bit. Though I am not known for it, I am quite good at seals, like a teammate of mine, she explained. Naruto, while excited, was also curious. Why do I need a checkup? I always heal quick, he questioned. Tsunade drew in a deep breath. Just because you healed doesn't mean you healed correctly. For instance, if you broke your arm, it could heal. But if not set properly, it could be misaligned and thus make it hurt to throw a punch or even just use your arm in general. She lectured. Naruto looked confused. Ms. A-lined? He questioned. Tsunade's eyes narrowed before answering. It means to not line up properly, she said as she gave a demonstration by using her pointer fingers not touching as she pushed them together. Thanks to the demonstration, Naruto understood what she was getting at. Well, how do you know that I have that problem? That's why I'm giving you the checkup, to make sure that hasn't happened since you don't seem to like hospitals, Tsunade explained. Finally grasping what she was talking about, he went on to explain what he was working on. Well, I'm set to face this guy, Neji Hyuga, who is a real jerk because he tried to kill his cousin, Naruto explained with a huff while crossing his arms. So, the closet pervert said he was going to teach me how to walk on water, which is what I was doing until I saw that white-haired pervert peeking in on the hot spring, then after that I met you, he explained. Tsunade pinched the bridge of her nose. Did he tell you anything else he was going to train you in? Naruto just shook his head. Tsunade let out a grunt of frustration. He is set to face a Hyuga and all he was going to get was chakra control training. I don't care if he is the Kyuubi's Jinchuriki, That is just, she thought angrily. Well, good chakra control is a good foundation. In fact, a lot of my skills are based on perfect chakra control, however, not having anything else lined up suggests that he either didn't have much faith in you or had he thought it would take you a month to learn how, she said angrily. Naruto looked down at this. Yet another person that saw him as nothing more than the damn kitsune. So, under me you will not only learn chakra control, but, if your parents are who I suspect they are, then there is a secret tech. HNIQUE I will teach you. Naruto was shocked. You know who my parents are? He asked in a desperate tone. Tsunade held a hand up to stop him. I said I suspect, but I can't confirm it until your chakra control improves, she told him. But why do I need good chakra control? I can already use a jutsu from the scroll of sealing. He protested. Just because you can use a jutsu doesn't mean you can use it effectively. If you can't mold your chakra properly, then you run the risk of either overloading or underpowering a jutsu, leading it to fail. If you use too much chakra, you could die, as not having any chakra in your body is the equivalent of having no blood, she explained. And in your case, it's worse. Naruto looked at her confused, for both the new word he hadn't heard before and how running out of chakra is worse for him. Seeing his confusion, she explained. If you run out of chakra, the Kyuubi could flood your system to keep you alive, but that could lead you going on a rampage, as its chakra is dark and malicious. Naruto was surprised that she knew about the Kyuubi and the effect his chakra can have on him. He began to quake in fear that maybe she was going to hurt him or turn him away. Seeing his expression, Tsunade spoke. Yes, I knew you held the Kyuubi, and no, I don't care. I knew someone just like you, and the kitsune did not define her. She perceived and became one of the strongest kunoichi I knew. Heck, sometimes she could even give the Yondaime a run for his money if he wasn't using his Hiraishin. She didn't even need the fuzzball's power to do so, she explained with a fond look in her eyes. Naruto was shocked. If she knew someone like him could be strong enough to rival the Yondaime, then his dream of becoming Hokage was achievable then. Really? Was she really that strong? Smiling down at him, she nodded. Yes, she was. She was also headstrong, stubborn, and had the will to never give up. The more she talked about this person, the more Naruto suspected he would get along really well with this woman. With this, his excitement exploding out of him. Hey. So Oba-san, what are you going to teach me? Well, the first thing I am going to teach you is chakra control, since that is the basis of what I use. I will also teach you how to fight without taking a hit. Since you are fighting a Hyuga, taking any kind of hit could prove fatal. And the last thing I'll teach you is physical conditioning, and not just working on your speed and strength. We will be working on flexibility and proper diet. Naruto looked at her confused. What does diet mean? It means what you eat. What does what I eat have to do with anything? Tsunade let out a sigh. Proper nutrition is what improves muscle growth, makes you stronger, improves your brain condition, helps you think better and understand more, and helps you grow taller. Having a proper diet can improve a shinobi's ability to survive on a mission, she explained. Well, I don't need anything but ramen, Naruto said while nodding his head. Listen, Gaki, you may love ramen, but if it is all you eat, an opponent you face who has been eating a per diet and is just as skilled as you will beat you, since his body has been properly fueled. Imagine training as hard as possible only to realize that your opponent wins because he was eating better than you. That would certainly make you memorable Hokage, but not a strong one. Tsunade used the same explanation she used on her brother to get him to eat properly, and seeing the look on Naruto's face, it seemed to still work. Under great protest, Naruto relented. Well, let's get started, she told him. Take off your shirt and jacket and I'll start your examination. Following his new sensei's instructions, he removed his top and stood before her. Her hands glowed green unlike the usual blue. Hey Oba-san, what's that? Quirking an eyebrow, she answered him. This is medical chakra, something that can be achieved with excellent chakra control. Didn't they teach you this in the academy? Naruto looked a little nervous. I may have missed that lesson, he chuckled. Well then, I guess we're going to be filling what else you missed over this training. Everything I will teach you will require you to be quite knowledgeable, she told him. Naruto began to panic. I'm not great with studying, he laughed off. Tsunade and Shizune's eyes narrowed. Well, that's not an issue. Using your cage bunshin, we can make sure you will build good habits. Naruto's face scrunched up in confusion. Tsunade let out a sigh before she explained. The cage bunshin no jutsu was invented by my granduncle, the Nadaime. The jutsu allows the user to receive all the memories that their bunshin gain over the course of their life, though they can cause a feedback overload that could harm the user's mind if they use too many or dispelled at once or kill the person due to how much chakra they use, she explained. Naruto's eyes widened at this revelation. Why didn't anyone tell me about that? Exclamation mark quote. Tsunade looked at him with a quirked eyebrow as she began her diagnosis. That warning should have been in the scroll when you were granted access. Naruto turned his gaze away from her. In response, she narrowed her in suspicion at him. How did you learn the move? Naruto was hesitant to answer. Shizune tried a different approach. Setting down Tauntaun, Shizune placed a comforting hand on Naruto's shoulder. Naruto-kun, we can't help you if you don't talk to us. You can trust us, we won't judge you. After a moment of silence, Naruto told the two how he failed the Bunshin no Jutsu portion of the academy and that his former sensei had tricked him into stealing the scroll of sealing and learn a move from the scroll that he would pass a special test. When pressed why no one helped him learn either chakra control to help him learn the Bunshin no Jutsu properly, he reluctantly told them, I was always kicked out of class, sometimes for asking a question, other times for trying to participate. Anytime I would ask for help, the teachers would say I was being a nusha. A nuisance. Shizune finished. Yeah. Naruto confirmed sadly. By this point he had his head down while tears brimmed in his eyes. Shizune hugged him, which he returned, while Tsunade went over what she learned. This child is greatly malnourished. If I had to bet, the chakra of the Kyuubi must be healing that. If he is an Uzumaki, then his genealogy and the Kyuubi's chakra are healing his malnutrition, thought a seething Tsunade, remembering that this was not what her grandfather wanted for children in this village. Taking a deep breath, Tsunade spoke to change the subject, though now she has a better understanding of why he doesn't understand certain words and concepts that should have been covered in the academy. Well, now you know more about the jutsu you learned from the scroll. We will be using this for everything but physical conditioning. We'll get started once I get that seal off of you. Now raise your hands up and prepare to feel some pain. Naruto was released from Shizune's hug and wiped his eyes. Thank you. For what, Naruto-kun? Asked Shizune. For listening and helping. This time Tsunade hugged him. While the one he got from Shizune was nice, this one felt warm and comforting. Alright, let's get to it, Tsunade said abruptly as she broke the hug, a light dusting of pink on her cheeks that she hid behind her fist. With a nod of his head, Naruto raised his arms above his head as the fingertips on Tsunade's hand light up with blue flames. Five-prong seal release, she cried out as she struck the seal on his stomach that made Naruto hunch over from the strike. As Naruto recovered from the hit, Tsunade turned to her apprentice. Shizune, use a henge and go into town, get some basic books on calligraphy, reading, and first-year medical books. While I may not make this boy a full apprentice, yet, he has quite a bit he needs to catch up on if he is going to be trained by us. Shizune's eyes widened in shock. Tsunade-sama, are you sure you want me to help train the boy? She asked hesitantly. Yes, while I will be overseeing the majority of his training, you have a different approach that he may listen to depending on the subject or if I get tired. Despite my age and who my grandparents are, I am biologically younger than my chronological age, the large amount of chakra his system has undoubtedly given the boy a lot of energy. That means we are more likely to get tired before he does, she told her apprentice. Hearing this reasoning, Shizune understood her master's way of thinking. Tsunade, same, if it's not rude of me, but why did you agree to train the boy? Tsunade looked at her apprentice before watching Naruto straighten up. Naruto, try the water walking exercise again, not that your chakra is flowing better. She shouted at him. Naruto gave a yell of acknowledgement. As he stood on the side of the river, he channeled his chakra to his feet before stepping out onto the nearby river. Call it a feeling, Shizune, she answered her apprentice as they watched Naruto perform the exercise effortlessly, and if what they were told was true, he was almost able to do the exercise with his chakra flow disrupted. Now with it flowing properly, he was able to do it flawlessly after using a hand sign to channel his chakra, which was stunning. While it can be improved to be done on instinct, doing what he did with less than an hour's practice shows just how much potential the boy has. Shizune returned to the riverbed to quiet the sight. While she had gone back to the village and got the texts that Tsunade had asked her to get, as well as lunch, she saw that Naruto had created well over 100 cage bunchins working on both the tree walking exercise as well as water walking. There was even a few working on separating different color sand in his palms. Shizune had to wonder where they got gray sand. Leaving that for later, she looked out to the two who were standing on the river while Naruto was going through taijutsu katas for the Tsunade's personal style, which relies on heavy strikes and evasion. As she often said, a medic that is taken out is useless to their team, so it is important that a medic never take a hit lest they risk the life of their squad. Breaking herself from her master's lessons, Shizune called out to the two, Tsunade-sama. Naruto-kun, I'm back and I brought lunch. She yelled as she held up a convenience store bag. Naruto was about to run over until his collar was grabbed by Tsunade, who used the hold to lift him from the water as she appeared to lecture him. He gave a pout before he seemed to relent and she set him back down on the water, though she didn't let him go until he had applied his chakra to the bottom of his feet. He called out to his clones, "Hey guys. Stop doing what you are doing." Eventually the clones all got to dry land. Naruto dismissed some of his clones. Based on how he gripped his head and the following lecture he received, he may have released too many that time. Sigh. Naruto, I told you not to release too many. Since they are focused on different tasks, when they dispel, your mind has to categorize everything that is coming in. If the information is not the same, then you may either take longer to process it or have it overshadowed by whatever else is being processed, making the training useless, she lectured. Naruto, being annoyed by the throbbing in his head, didn't realize what he said as he said it. Well, if you're so smart, why don't you train like this, he snapped. He gulped when he realized what he did before robotically turning to face Tsunade. He. Sorry, I didn't mean to snap, he said nervously. Using her monstrous strength, she threw Naruto by his jacket to shore, aiming to clip a few of his clones in the process. Her aim was on point, nailing 8 of his clones with the orange-clad blonde. With a smirk she walked back to shore, as Naruto pushed himself up. She stood over him, a manic grin on her face as she asked, "Have you learned your lesson, Gaki?" Naruto quickly nodded his head. He placed his hands in the ram seal and began doing his best to follow Tsunade's instructions when dispelling his clones. Though he went slower than originally instructed after a few attempts, resulting in too many being dispelled, giving him another headache. When he was done, he joined Tsunade, Shizune and Tonton, who had been laying under the trees, for lunch. "Hey Shizune-chan, what did you get? Did you get ramen?" he asked excitedly. Despite letting out a low giggle, "No Naruto-kun, I got us bentos that have rice, chicken, and an assortment of vegetables. And for Tonton, I got you vegetable bento." "Oink," replied the excited pig. Shizune got a nod of approval from her master while Naruto seemed dejected. "Ah, no ramen," he complained. Tsunade gave Naruto a look that told him to be quiet. "Naruto, what did we talk about when it comes to diet?" she asked as her tone got darker. Naruto gave a thinking face as he tried to recall what she told him. Suddenly a light bulb went off over his head. "That eating right makes strong, shinobi," he repeated enthusiastically. With a smile she gave a nod. "Correct, and eating your vegetables along with protein is one example of eating right." Naruto was quick to retort, "But ramen is healthy. It has meat in it." Tsunade let out a sigh. "While it does, it also is high in salt and lacks the best vegetables for a growing shinobi, she lectured. Naruto looked like he was about to argue with her again, but she cut him off. Naruto, just because I am trying to get you to eat better does not mean you need to give up ramen. If you couldn't eat a meal that was unhealthy for you from time to time, a food like ramen would not exist. Like everything, too much of one thing makes it a bad thing. Naruto looked angry as he glared at her. His time with the beautiful lady in front of him had taught him that she is just as stubborn as he is. He refused to relent his stance on ramen, but if what she said about eating right was true, maybe he could give it a try. After all, what kind of shinobi wants to be remembered as, they didn't eat right so they lost? Not the best look for the soon-to-be greatest Hokage. With that, he left out a long sigh before he asked for the bento. Tsunade and Shizune smiled to him as Shizune handed him a bento and a pair of chopsticks. All four took a seat in the shade of the trees before letting out a prayer of thanks and digging in. While eating, Naruto had to admit that the vegetables he was eating definitely tasted better than the ones he had before. Though he was curious about something. "Nay, Tsunade-chan, why are you having me focus so much on chakra control? Like, I get that you said it was like the big thing you used in all your techniques, but like, why focus on it so much?" Tsunade gave him a look before beginning her explanation. "Chakra is like a pool of water, or in your case an ocean," she said as she rubbed his head. Naruto looked dejected, however he actually leaned into the affection she was showing him. You cannot control the actions of a body of water, however you can draw from it and pick out the amount you need. Think of a jutsu as a person drinking water from their own pool, too much water and they could drown or cough it up, too little and they are left thirsty. This is the point of chakra control, to use only the amount you need so a jutsu doesn't get overloaded or not activate, she explained. Naruto seemed to understand her analogy better than when Iruka-sensei tried to explain it. Last time he tried to get him to learn, he just went on and on about how good control makes things stronger and that if he didn't learn it then he would struggle to learn a jutsu. Well, he learned the Kage Bunshin no Jutsu without good control. But wait, I learned the Kage Bunshin no Jutsu and you keep saying I'm wasting chakra. How can that be true if I keep making Bunshin? Tsunade gave him a small smile. Good question. You see, the Kage Bunshin uses a lot of chakra to make, so it is difficult to overload them. However, have you noticed that it's easier to make massive amounts of them rather than a few? Naruto thought about it for a moment before nodding to her question. See, this is due to your control. The higher the control, the easier it is to use a small amount of chakra to use these large jutsu like your Kage Bunshin. Imagine how many more you could make if you didn't need to try as hard to make so few of them. Naruto got a contemplative look, then his eyes lit up at the thought. There is something else to keep in mind. Some Kekkei Genkai that are chakra-based could also activate or be usable to their owner as they are able to easily mold their chakra, she explained. Naruto got excited. So are you saying I could have a cool ability like Sasuke Tem? Exclamation mark quote. Tsunade shrugged. It's possible, but this only applies to chakra-based Kekkei Genkai as their ability to mold their chakra is tied directly to their ability to wield said abilities. Then Naruto got skeptical as something struck him. But wait, if I have so much chakra, shouldn't it not matter if my control is good? Tsunade shook her head. The biju in your gut only gives you large reserves and access to another source of chakra. The ability to control it is still all you. No matter how much chakra you have, if you can't control it, your instincts won't manifest the ability as it could result in its user's death. And in your case, running out has different side effects. Like I told you, if you run out, it will flood your system and make you lose control. However, if you can control your own, you can eventually control its if it tries to force some into you, or if you need to draw on its power should such an emergency come up, like when you fought Haku and that long-tongued lady in the forest. Quote. Naruto looked both sad and eager, sad that he may have had a cool ability sooner if his control was better, but eager to see if he did. If all he needed to do was boost his control to make it happen, then he was more than eager to put in the work. Plus, If he could use the furball's chakra because of it, then all the better reason to get to it. Before he could get started, however, Tsunade put her finished bento and chopsticks to the side and got to her feet. If you need more of an incentive, then if you can get your control to my standards, I'll teach you how to do this. Eager to see what she would do, Naruto watched her walk on top of the river to stand in front of a massive boulder he estimated to be 5 times her size. He watched with rapt attention as she struck the boulder, shattering it to dust. Naruto was awestruck. You see, me punching this hard is a combination of chakra control and my muscle strength. While we may not be able to get yours this high by the finals, I can definitely show you how to do it with H chakra if you get your control high enough. Naruto was practically jumping out of his skin. He could see it now. He punched Neji Tem and Sasuke Tem so hard he'd send them flying out of the arena. With the biggest smile he could have, he shouted, "Then what are we waiting for? Let's get back to it." She gave a smile to match his enthusiasm. Well, he is certainly eager, I'll give him that. Though I suspect that all that chakra has given him a form of ADHD based on the way he acts. He must have so much that it fuels him like a squirrel on caffeine, she thought to herself. Okay, however, this time we are going to do things a bit differently. Like I told you before, I am a medic nin, so you will be learning this as well. However, before we start there, Shizune is going to be helping you understand everything you had missed out on in the academy and before. To do this, I want you to be as honest with either her or myself as possible when we teach you. No question is too dumb or stupid, and asking for help is one of the tenets of a Konoha shinobi, which is seen in our teamwork. If you can't ask your fellow Konoha shinobi for help, how can you rely on them to have your back when it comes time for a mission? Naruto looked hesitant to agree, but after a bit of time, Shizune's kind words of encouragement, Tsunade's encouraging smile and pinning glare, he relented. Oh, okay, I got it, pretty Oba-san. Tsunade smiled and gave an approving nod. Okay, with that settled, make 150 cage bunchins and I'll give you instructions from there. With a nod, Naruto made his bunchins. When the Sea of Orange came to existence, they all looked to Tsunade for instructions. Okay, 50 of you are going to go with Shizune for studying. Remember, don't diversify into too many subjects at one time. Too much information at one time could mean that he doesn't learn at all. Also to all the Naruto bunchins, remember to ask questions if you don't understand. You will do yourself more harm if you don't understand and don't ask for an explanation, she reminded. Shizune and the clones nodded. They went to tree line where Shizune used Doden release to make some desks for the bunchins to kneel at before cloning the books she brought so the bunchins could each have a copy as she taught. Tsunade turned to the remaining bunchins. All right, 10 of you come here, she called over. When the 10 stood before her, she reached into the water and pulled out some rocks. You 10 will be using your chakra to separate the different colors from the powder again. She crushed the rocks into powder and put the dust in a clone's hands. She repeated this until all the bunchins had a handful of powdered rocks. Go sit on the riverbank and concentrate. You don't need to do this quickly yet, for now focus on just doing it correctly. Speed will come with practice, she instructed. The clones nodded and got to work. Now for the remaining bunchins, I want you to divide into 2 groups of 45. She waited for the groups to divide themselves, though there were times that she needed to intervene to prevent the bunchins from dispelling each other due to disagreements. All right, the group on my left, she raised her left hand to speed this up, will go back to tree walking with the same instructions as before. You will run, and when you can run without concentrating, you will walk, and when you can do that without concentrating, you will float a leaf with your chakra in your hand. While you may not get past this point today, if you do, put them on different parts of your body. The best way to know when you succeed is the same as before, you can do it without thinking about it. The clones nodded before going away from the group Shizune was teaching and began their part of the training. She turned to the remaining group. You lot will be doing water walking with the same instructions, however the order for you is reversed. You will walk, then you will run, you will then add the leaves. Do you understand? She seemed to get a nod from all the clones before sending them off. Tsunade turned to the real one. Now you and I will go back to taijutsu on the water. With your large chakra pool, doing it this way will be the quicker way to get your chakra control to where I would like it to be. Naruto looked like he wanted to ask a question but also looked like he was holding himself back. Remember, I told you that were no stupid questions, so if you have one, ask. Taking a deep breath, Naruto asked his question, why not have clones work with me on the taijutsu katas? If they can transfer the memories back, shouldn't that help me learn the style quicker? Tsunade smiled at the question. Good question, she complimented. Theoretically it could, however we have already split how many different sources you will be gaining knowledge from, especially with the set Shizuna's teaching. Also you don't have the best habits in taijutsu, which I suspect is from your former instructors, so until I am sure that I have helped you correct what they taught you that was wrong as well as ensure that you can do each movement correctly, you will not be using bunshins to aid you, for now. If you practice a style or train with bad habits, they could leak into what you are trying to do and erase all the progress you would be making or prevent you from making any, she explained. Naruto seemed to appreciate the answer. Now let's get to it. If you want to use bunshins to help you learn this, then the more solid your form is, the quicker you can use them to help you. Keep in mind that for every kata you get right, I want you to do a body weight movement of my choice for the reps of my choosing, understand? Naruto nodded his accent and got in the stance she showed him earlier, hands up in front of his face while being slightly open with elbows tucked in, standing on the balls of his feet, while slightly leaning forward. Begin, she ordered. Hours have passed since Naruto started his training with Tsunade and Shizune. A tired Naruto laid panting on the riverbed while Tsunade and Shizune watched the tired blonde lay down, though Shizune was sitting down as she herself was tired from teaching 50 students. Well, I have to say I am proud of both of you, complimented Tsunade. Thank you, Tsunade-sama. Yeah, huff, thanks Oba-san, panted out Naruto. Well, let's get going. We can't stay out here without camping gear, and I really prefer to take a shower after today, commented Tsunade. Shizune stood to her feet while Naruto struggled to turn over. Tsunade rolled her eyes before she went over and began carrying Naruto bridal style. Naruto attempted to protest, however he was too tired. Hey, I can walk on my own, he said weakly after a while. Tsunade shook her head before shifting him to cradle his head on her shoulder, making Shizune get flashbacks to how she used to with her uncle. Hush Gaki, you're tired right now, rest up so we can get back to it in the morning, she told him softly. Like how she used to do with her brother. Hearing this, Naruto smiled lightly before falling asleep in Tsunade's arms. Shizune looked away with her eyes before she rubbed her arm. Tsunade gave her a quizzical look. Tsunade-sama, we never found out where he lived, she said with a dusting of pink on her cheeks. Tsunade also blushed in embarrassment before clearing her throat. Well, for now we will take him with us to the hotel, hopefully he will be rested enough to tell us where he lives so we can at least get him a change of clothes. He's too tired to remember what to do if we tell him to meet us here tomorrow, Tsunade responded. Not seeing a better solution, Shizune agreed while packing the books they have before heading back to the village while Tonton stood next to Tsunade. As they walked back to Konoha, Tsunade asked, so what did you cover in his lessons? Well, first I did a basic assessment to see what he needed help with. I found out that while he could read and write, his handwriting definitely needs work. Tsunade expected some of this. Being the Jinchuriki of the Kyuubi, it would make sense that the boy could at least read and write, or else Sarutobi sensei may lose him to a contract he signs without being able to tell what he agreed to, thought Tsunade. However, his academic knowledge has much to be desired. He seems behind in many subjects that should have been covered while he was in the academy. While he can do basic math, anything more complicated than that and he struggles. The same could be said about the general knowledge of the very village he lives in. It seems that his tale of not being taught at the academy seems to be more severe than he let on. He was very hesitant to ask questions at first, however after much encouragement on my part eventually his clones began to ask questions. From there he began to understand the material at a good pace. If this keeps up, I should be able to fix what he should have had in a few weeks. Currently the lesson plan is just making up what he should have learned in the academy and his calligraphy. Tsunade was angered by what she was hearing and what the boy had to go through. This is not what grandfather wanted when he created the village, and if he was a member of her family, well, let's just say that building supports don't take to kindly being pressed sideways. The three arrived at the hotel they were staying at rather quickly. It too was on the outskirts so they didn't get seen by anyone, especially at this time of day. They discreetly made their way to their room, which Shizune got for Tsunade as she was still carrying Naruto. It was a fairly standard hotel room with 2 queen-size beds and a nightstand on each side of the beds. Tsunade set Naruto on her bed while Shizune placed the books on the small table the room had. Tsunade gently nudged Naruto awake. He opened his eyes groggily, and said rather quietly, "Oba-san. Hey Gaki, you need to take a shower so you can sleep better, okay? But before you do, can you tell me where you live so can get you a change of clothes?" Naruto nodded tiredly as he told them that he lived in an apartment that was on the top floor of his building located close to the academy. He was sure to tell them that it was in an oval-like building with a small deck, as well as the address. Though he did have to repeat himself a few times as he did mumble from time to time. Once they got his key, Tsunade sent him to shower. "Shizune, you stay with him. I'll go get him a pack so if this happens again, we won't have to worry about it." Shizune was about object until Naruto had trouble with the door. Shizune sighed as she went to help Naruto. Tsunade grabbed Naruto's key and headed out. She had to go out discreetly, especially with where his apartment was located. When she got through his door, she can't say she was pleased. While it was decently sized, having a separate kitchen, bath, and bed, the walls seemed to have cracks throughout them. There were garbage bags in some of the corners of the room. He had a clothesline in his bedroom. There was food containers stacked all over the place. If she had to guess, this place was in good condition when he got it, but it seemed like no one checked in on the boy to make sure he was doing all right. This place is in desperate need of repairs. It also seems like this kid has no sense of cleanliness. Did anyone look after him while he was younger, or was he just left on his own? That makes no sense. Surely someone would have taught this kid basic cleanliness or at least checked on him, thought Tsunade. She made a cage bunchen of her own that at least got rid of all the trash. At least he dusts and scrubs the place down, though something tells me he doesn't use sanitizers, she thought as she began to pack a backpack she suspected he used for missions. Once the bunchen left his apartment and threw the trash out, she made her way back to the hotel. When she arrived, she saw Shizune trying to convince Naruto to not put on his dirty clothes. "Hey Naruto, I brought you some clothes. Put a clean set on then get to bed, okay?" Naruto nodded tiredly before going back in the bathroom to change. By the looks of things when he got out, he seemed to have brushed his teeth as well. With this, Tsunade all but pushed Shizune into the bathroom, saying she was the more exhausted of the pair. So she needed to go next. Tsunade-sama sure has changed when she met this boy. She hasn't complained about not having any sake since the start of his training. I know it has only been a day, but I can't help but think what effect this boy has on her, she thought as she freshened up. When Shizune came out of the bathroom, she noticed Tsunade sitting in a chair watching over Naruto as he sleeps. Curious as to what her master was doing, Shizune coughed lightly, getting Tsunade's attention. Tsunade, realizing what she was caught doing, had a light dusting of pink on her cheeks as she moves to the bathroom to freshen up. What is wrong with me? Why am obsessing over this boy? Sure, he reminds me of them, but that can't be it, can it? She thought as she got ready for the night. When Tsunade left the bathroom, she saw that both Naruto and Shizune are already asleep, with Tonton taking up residency on Shizune's bed. Since Naruto was in her bed, she made her way over to it, resigning herself to sharing it with him. Noticing how peaceful he looks, she goes over to him and lightly pokes him on the forehead with a smile as an attempt to move him over slightly so she can also rest in bed. While it did move him like she intended, something happened that she didn't expect. Naruto had grabbed onto her hand after she poked him. By the looks of things, he was heavily asleep, and not aware that he did that. Not wanting to wrench her hand out of his grip and risk disturbing both him and Shizune, Tsunade decided that she would let the Gaki hold her hand as he slept, but she would sleep under the top sheet rather than both to retain some form of modesty between the two. Naruto awoke to a feeling of something soft engulfing him. He tried to open his eyes to see what it was, but that was proving difficult. Whatever it was preventing him from opening his eyes. He also noted that he felt two limbs wrapped around him. This is probably what was keeping the thing that was preventing him from opening his eyes from moving. His wiggling and shifting elicited a soft moan from someone nearby. Tsunade was sleeping soundly in her bed. Something was keeping her warm despite being under the sheet of the bed she was staying while in Konoha. Whatever it was, she seemed to be holding it close based on the amount of contact she was feeling along her arms and bust. Suddenly it began to move and shift, probably trying to out of her grasp based on what she was feeling. The problem was that whatever it was moving around within her ample bosom, which caused her to moan as if she was stretching while waking up. As her eyes fluttered open, she noticed a mop of spiky blonde hair wiggling to get free as she held its owner close to her. At least they were still under separate sheets, she noticed, with a barely noticeable tint of pink on her cheeks. She let Naruto go, allowing him to see what had held him so close in the morning. When he saw that he was snuggled into Tsunade's bosom, he became afraid. He was afraid she would hit him for being a pervert like she had seen him do to that white-haired man. He was sitting there, waiting for the punishment he believed was coming. Though he had to admit, they were very soft to the touch and rather pleasant to be in contact with, causing a notice. Abel blushed to adorn his cheeks. Eventually Tsunade got out of bed. What could she do? She was the one that held him close to her, so she can't blame him for something he didn't do. She let out a long and heavy sigh as she stood, revealing to Naruto she was wearing a full body, violet, silk night go. Get up, she ordered. Once I am done changing, you will go and change while I wake Shizune. Once she is ready, we will grab some breakfast under a henge in the hotel restaurant. You will eat what I approve and the amount I tell you to get. After that we will go back to the riverbed and resume your training, understood? Naruto could only nod dumbly. He was in shock that she wasn't berating him, like his teammate would do if she believed he messed up or did something wrong, or being sent to the other side of the village like the white-haired pervert while being told he was a demon, and she wasn't going to train him anymore. He didn't come out of his shocked state until the bag he usually packed for long-term missions landed in front of him. He looked to see where it came from, only to see a now changed Tsunade moving to wake Shizune and by proxy, Taunton. Remembering her instructions, he quickly moved to the bathroom to get ready for a new day of training. Once Shizune was ready, the group hanged into a different appearance, ones that made them not stand out and look rather ordinary, before collecting what they would need for his training and making their way to the hotel restaurant that was serving breakfast. Naruto looked around, taking in the sights and smells he didn't often come across. He looked like he was ready to run over to the provided buffet and just take what he wanted. However, he was stopped by Tsunade as she placed a hand on his shoulder. He looked up at Tsunade, confusion on his face. Remember what I told you? Tsunade waited for his response. After a few seconds he remembered as he smacked his hand with his hand. Yeah, you said that you would be telling me what I can eat and how much, he responded with a reaffirming nod. She nodded in confirmation. What I want you to get is 2 servings of eggs, a cup of oats, some fruit of your choice and some congee with dried shredded fish. Naruto looked at her confused. Why those foods, Oba-san? Tsunade appreciated the question. Well, eggs and the congee are a source of protein that will help with muscle development. This won't guarantee you larger muscles, but it will help you grow stronger as you work out. The oats are to help you stay full so that you do not need to stop training due feeling hungry as often. However, if you eat too many, it could hinder you by having you gain unnecessary weight. The fruit is for the essential nutrients to help with memory and help you gain what you won't get from meats. She explained. While Naruto didn't fully grasp why she chose the foods she did, he did understand that they would help him grow stronger, and for him that was a good enough reason to follow her advice. Besides, he bet that either her or Shizune would end up teaching him what all of this means anyway. With a nod of confirmation, the three set out to get their food, Naruto only getting what Tsunade told him to, though she did give him a stern glare whenever he tried to go off of the prescribed diet. Though these were not foods he was not used to, some of them were pretty good. When they were finished eating, the group went back to the riverbank to resume the training they had started the previous day, though what he learned from Shizune changed as well as the addition that he had to try and Katsi H. Taunton for 2 hours, much to the pig's protest. A week has passed since Naruto began training with Tsunade, and he has to admit that this has been the most intensive week of training he had been through. With the diet he has been following from Tsunade every day, he noticed that he had started growing a bit as he was eating far healthier than when he was just eating ramen. He had also learned a lot of stuff from Shizune. He didn't even know that there were more Biju than the Kyuubi. Who knew what you could learn this stuff from history class? When the end of the week came, Naruto got excited. Using 100 clones for 7 days a couple times a day really helps with improving one's chakra control. He had really gotten the hang of Tsunade's taijutsu style, especially the dodging part. He also learned to not call Tsunade Oba-san crazy, it gets her more riled up. When his control was dubbed good enough, Tsunade started to teach him her chakra-enhanced strength. He also noticed he was not tiring as easily. Apparently, the body weight movements, as Tsunade called them, were helping his muscle development and improving his stamina, while chasing Taunton improved his speed and reaction time due to how she could make very sharp changes in movement. The real problem came through with the stretching cool down. As she did them with him, he became very aware of how beautiful she was, and it sometimes made his chest race and sweat a little more when he was close to her sometimes. It also didn't help that she still hugged him overnight, as he still found himself waking up either holding her hand or her hugging him. He did ask why his clones were still doing calligraphy though. Because by the end of the second week he'll be having you learn Fuinjutsu. Naruto gave her a questioning look. You see, Fuinjutsu is an art that many people rarely use, however it can be very strong. Remember the Yondaime used it to defeat the Kyuubi? She asked, to which he nodded his response. There are also explosive tags and storage scroll, to name a few examples. With this art you could even learn a seal that would even boost your healing rate to such a degree that even if you lost your heart, you could grow it back, she had told him. His reaction of course was that of a starry-eyed child, greatly expressing his eagerness to learn this awesome jutsu. Hold on, first you need to have better handwriting so you can make the seals. One wrong brush stroke could mean that you'll be out of commission to fight the Neji kid you want to fight. GHT so badly, she warned him. This, obviously, had gotten his attention. He wasn't going to miss out on his chance to teach Neji Tem a lesson. Plus, she has given him more training than anyone else he has met or learned from, while Shizune made the stuff he was learning far easier for him to understand. And, so that was a plus. He would listen to Tsunade-chan when she warned him about how dangerous Fuinjutsu is. Tsunade faced her latest protege with her arms crossed under her magnificent bust. Are you ready to start learning my enhanced strength technique, Gaki? Naruto excitedly bobbed his head in anticipation. Yes. He shouted eagerly. Alright, but before we get started, I want you to make your clones again, however. This time, however, I want you to make 200 Kaga Bunchins. Naruto sat still with his hand raised, waiting for her explanation. He had learned that if he asked her or waited patiently, she would explain her actions. Realizing that he was asking why she wanted him to do this, she clarified, you are probably asking why we are increasing the amount of Bunshin. With a nod of confirmation she continues, well, for this technique we are adding clones to ensure that you at least have a rudimentary version ready for your match. While you will still be having a set doing water walking with the leaves, they will also be practicing the katas of my style while we work on the enhanced strength technique, as you can never have enough control over your chakra, especially if you want to use your tenant's chakra in the future. The set that would normally be doing tree walking will be meditating. This will help you understand your chakra's flow, which you will be attempting to manipulate, which will help you feel if you ever get put under a genjutsu, as your flow will be disrupted when under one's effects. Since I know Shizune has gone over the basic principles and methods of escaping a genjutsu with you, being able to manipulate your chakra at such a level will help with your ability to perform the personal release method, as you will be able to feel the change in your chakra flow. Quote. Naruto looked a little lost with the explanation. Tsunade waited somewhat patiently to see if he had any questions. So basically, the point of meditation is to make sure I'm not affected by genjutsu. Tsunade shook her head in the negative. Not quite. See, everyone can be affected by genjutsu, since it is an art centered around subtlety. What it will do, however, is help you recognize one by your chakra flow and make it easier for you to escape, she clarified. Naruto took up a thinking pose before responding. That makes sense. So, when do we get started? He asked eagerly. With a smirk on her face, Tsunade responded, right now, make your bunchins and we will get started. Naruto responded with a smile of his own while making his bunchins, who set off to their appointed tasks, with Tsunade's group staying to hear her instructions. Alright, each of you take up positions along the side of the cliff. Make sure you are evenly spaced between each other. Tsunade waited patiently for the bunchins to get into position. Now what this technique involves is concentrating chakra to your fist. While this part does not require much control, what does is when you release it. You need to release the chakra right at the point of impact outward from your fist. This is all about timing and control. However, since we have been working greatly on your control, you will need to work on your timing. Use small amounts of chakra, enough to slightly crack the cliff. You don't need to worry about using large amounts of chakra for now. The more chakra you use, the more damage your hits will do, but this is not what we are focusing on. For now, we want to get your timing down, understand? The bunchins nodded in understanding before turning around to get started. Oh, before you start, she turns to the real Naruto. Every 10 strikes you do, I want you to do the following: 10 wide push-ups, 10 squats, 10 high knees, and 10 lose push-ups, then get back to striking. For the clones, alternate which fist you strike with, stay in your stance the entire time even when you are feeling exhausted. Remember, when you get sloppy your opponent will strike their hardest, she ordered. With that, the clones and Naruto got in their stance and began striking the cliffside. In the meantime, Tsunade made sure that the clones that were separating different colored crushed rocks had their material before staying mostly with the clones that were practicing their katas, ensuring they are keeping their form proper as they practiced. The bunchins with Shizune have recently just finished the basics that Academy had went over. Due to this, the bunchins had begun learning the basics of medical ninjutsu theory with the hope of being able to use the mystical palm by the 3rd week in the North. Partway through the week, Naruto brought up something to Tsunade's attention while they were eating lunch. You look like something has your attention, what's up? Naruto looked a little confused before telling Tsunade and Shizune what's on his mind. Well, something weird has been happening, I guess, with the clones that are meditating. It's like they can see these patches of blue around them. The blue patches also seem to have different levels of intensity, he told them. Shizune and Tsunade looked curiously at him, both suspecting the same thing. Tell me, Naruto-kun, do these patches move as if they are alive? Naruto had to think about it for a bit. Yes. I sometimes see two moving a lot, while some of them seem to have concentrations around certain areas like the wire trying to use the blue energy, he told them. Naruto, you access this ability through meditation, correct? Naruto nodded in confirmation. I want you to meditate for me, then let me know when you start to see these blue patches, Tsunade ordered. After a while, Naruto let Tsunade know that he can see them, though there aren't as many as when his clones were meditating. That's fine. Tell me, do you see two patches close to you? Yeah. One is really bright while the other doesn't seem as bright, he relayed. That statement confirmed for the two women that Naruto was a censor. However, they were curious how powerful this ability was. He mentioned before that he could see the blue, being manipulated to maybe he can even see a person actually molding their chakra. Naruto, I want you to follow the brighter patch as you meditate. Let me know if you can see any shifts in the patch. Okay, Oba-san. With that, the bigger patch started to slowly move away from him. After moving around for a bit, Naruto noticed that it seemed like the blue was gathering at a speck. IFIC point before it was unleashed. A loud crack was heard and the gathered blue was gone. Naruto opened his eyes quickly to see that Tsunade was standing in front of a downed tree that looked like she just punched it. She was also standing where he had seen the bright blue patch in his mind. Naruto, were you able to follow the movement of the blue patch as well as when it became concentrated within it? Asked Tsunade. Naruto quickly nodded his head. Yeah. What was that? He asked quickly. Well, Gaki, it seems that you are a sensor nin. Meaning you can track chakra signatures, those are the blue patches you described. You can even see the chakra a person had being molded, which is uncommon for a sensor. Does that mean I have a super cool and unique skill? Asked an excited Naruto. Tsunade rubbed the top of his head. Yes, it does, Gaki. However, that means that your meditating clones will have to work on this Abby. Liddy, since you may be able to take it further if you get used to it, she told him. Alright, let's get to it then. Shouted an excited Naruto. Alright, when you make your clones, send the group to where they are going to meditate. I'll give them their instructions then. In the meantime, have your other clones continue the route we have been using thus far. With a nod, Naruto created his clones and joined the ones that were punching the cliff. The group that was to meditate waited patiently for Tsunade to give them their instructions. Ever since he was able to get his large reserves under control as well as spending time with Shizune and Tsunade, his need for attention had fallen off a bit, as well as his chakra-induced ADHD seemed to be a thing of the past. Now, instead of being a squirrel on caffeine, he was just an excitable 13-year-old, who Tsunade had to admit she was enjoying his company as well as him being her cuddle buddy, though she won't admit that part to anyone. Alright, listen up. When you are sensing the chakras around the area, I want you lot to focus on individual signatures before trying to look for groups. Focus on the molding of chakra in the patches. See if you can trace to where the chakra is being molded at and making the images clearer. I suspect that you could fully see a person's shape, not just the patch, if you can see the molding. Some of you, I want to spread your range as far as you can. Lock on to signatures of animals if you must. You will see, especially with this ability, that animals have their own chakra as well. Use them to work on practicing seeing far away targets that are well beyond your line of sight, she told them. With the instructions given out, the clones got to work. After a long day of training, Naruto was once again dragged to Tsunade and Shizune's hotel. He didn't mind it, he just wished she wouldn't carry him there. It was nice though. He felt safe and warm with Tsunade, though he still woke up a little tense that she would get angry with him because of how they woke up. But it was nice to not wake up in his lonely apartment. He liked that through his conditioning he was getting faster and lasting longer when he was training, especially the dodge training she always had him do after lunch and before their cool down. Their after training stretches still made him feel a bit heated in his chest, and he was certainly doing his best to hide the blushes he got when she smiled at him. As the trio entered the hotel room, Tsunade had something for him to work on. Naruto, she called. He looked at her through tied eyes. I want you to spend some time using your sensory ability to sense the people that walk by the hotel and track a group for as long as you can. Naruto looked at her like she was insane. He was really tired. How was he supposed to stay awake long enough to track a group of people in Konoha? She apparently knew what he was thinking, since she turned to him and said, Naruto, just because you are tired isn't an excuse. When you are out on a mission, will you let your responsibilities to your team go simply because you are tired? Will you give up in a fight because you are tired? These questions made him remember his training back in Wave. He had trained all through the night on multiple occasions just to get the tree walking exercise down. This was no different. With his mind set, he ran towards the bed before he was stopped by Tsunade. Sit on the floor, You are still grungy from training and I don't think you want to sleep in sheet. That will smell like your day of training, do you? Naruto rubbed the back of his head sheepishly. You're right Tsunade-chan, he replied, not thinking about the suffix. Naruto took a seat in the middle of the room before training his sensory ability. As Naruto rushed over to begin meditating, he didn't notice that Tsunade was developing a blush however Shizune did. Tsunade-sama has changed since she has met Naruto-kun. For some reason she has been getting awfully close to him. It's like she is treating him as a younger brother and she didn't want to continue on that path as she didn't see the older woman treating anyone like that since her uncle's passing. That was why she constantly gambled and drank sake, to try and repress the memories of both Dan and Nawaki. But she isn't freezing at the sight of blood anymore. I mean sure she locked up when he cut his knuckles open or bled a little from dodging what she threw at him but now it seems like she is over it. What has caused this change? What does Naruto-kun process that has helped Tsunade-sama? Questioned Shizune as she freshened up for bed. It would be another 2 hours before Tsunade would conclude Naruto's training for the day. Periodically she would look out the window and make sure that the targets Naruto was tracking were moving in the directions she could see. To her delight, he was starting to track his targets with decent clarity though he did fall off eventually, though that was when they were beyond her sight. He could also tell if they were young or old as well. This proves his abilities indeed had a lot of room to grow. It would be the end of the second week of training that all three would experience a surprise that would shake both Naruto and Tsunade to their core and bring the two to becoming inseparable. The end of the second week came rather quickly for Naruto. He was happy about all the training he was receiving. The calisthenics were doing wonders for him. Chasing down the stylish pig forced his speed and agility to grow, as was the dodge training he was subjected to by Tsunade. He could see it in the mirror at the end of each week. His physique had improved from being just lean to lean with definition, especially since she had dramatically increased the amount of reps she had him do each day for his calisthenics. Heck, he could even clasp his hands behind his back by reaching from the top and the bottom of his back, which greatly excited him. His chakra control had gone up insanely well thanks to the first week as well as his clones continuing to work on it through the second week. He could do the dumb Bunshin no Jutsu now. When he asked about it after training and the lessons from Shizune, Shizune explained that the jutsu use very little chakra as it is used to be diversionary jutsu as well as one taught to learning shinobi so they would have some means of escape if they had ever come across a senior shinobi. This was especially true during the clan wars era that preceded the hidden villages, where very young children could be ambushed and killed almost how he and his team were by Zabuza. That amazed Naruto. Originally, he figured that the jutsu was useless as it was just an illusion, but if it could save lives then he could definitely see it as useful in such a situation. When it came to his super strength, he was making a lot of progress. Though he didn't like using so little when he started, when he received the memories of a clone about to lose its arm as it go a little ambitious in using more chakra than Tsunade told him to use. He had chills running down his spine from that one for the whole day. He also greatly listened to Tsunade when she told him what to do when practicing the super strength jutsu. When he is noting his progress, he was able to easily chip away at cliff face, putting spiderweb cracks in it as well as chipping away pieces every time he struck. In fact, she said he was ready to add more chakra to each strike. Alright Naruto, I think you are ready to add more chakra to your strikes. You have been able to add and control your chakra in every strike along the cliff face. Now I want you to shatter each boulder I make for you, Tsunade explained while Naruto stood eagerly in front of her while he had a set of clones doing the katas for Tsunade as she had a cage bunshin overseeing his that were practicing while water walking. He still had a set with Shizune, studying the more advanced basics of medical ninjutsu focused on muscles and bones. She and Tsunade hoped it would help him pick his strikes better when fighting an opponent like a Hyuga who leave their torso vulnerable when they strike. He also had a final set that was meditating to better get accustomed to his sensory ability while also doing the powder separation training for multitasking, as Tsunade put it. Tsunade told him that by the final week she was going to start having him use it while dodging to start learning how to it in combat. Create 60 cage bunchins and we shall get started, she ordered. Eager to get started, Naruto created the number she wanted as she did a few seals before slamming a palm on the ground and shouting, Doden, Daichidokaku. She shouted as an entire field of boulders raised out of the ground. Naruto and his clones took up spots in front of the risen boulders, waiting for her signal to begin. As Tsunade crossed her arms under her impressive bust, she gave a nod to begin, though Naruto was blushing when he noticed it. He quickly shook his head before getting started. When the group finished lunch, Shizune had taken a set of bunchins to resume his medical studies, with 2 sets of 50 went to meditate and water walk with leaves encasing both of his arms, while Tsunade took the real Naruto. Alright Naruto, it's time for dodge training. Are you ready? Tsunade asked. Naruto nodded his head affirmatively. Tsunade smiled, okay, I'm going to be throwing any projectiles faster as well as any strikes will also be coming faster. There will be times I will use my enhanced strength. You will need to use your sensory ability to determine which strike is enhanced so you learn to use the ability in combat. Naruto nodded eagerly with a smile on his face in anticipation for Tsunade's training. The dodge training had been going on for almost 4 hours now and Naruto was getting a little slower as Tsunade kept ramping up the intensity. Sweat was pouring down his brow as he took in gulps of air between each reprieve at this point. Dodging a quick side kick by jumping back, creating distance between himself and Tsunade. Much to his terror Tsunade used her incredible strength to rip a boulder out of the ground, which she hurled at him with insane speed. Naruto went wide-eyed at the incoming projectile. From the speed it was traveling, he was quickly learning he couldn't dodge this. Firming his resolve, Naruto concentrated his chakra to his fist as he prepares to destroy the incoming projectile. Thanks to his chakra control training, gathering his chakra and releasing it for Tsunade's inexcusably heavy chakra control training, Naruto was able to quickly channel chakra to his fist in the time it took for the boulder to reach him. Naruto threw his fist forward to smash the boulder, only he was not expecting what accompanied his fist. From his chest, following the path of his fist, were several spiked, golden glowing chains that had spear tips as the leading link on every chain. The chains assisted in utterly destroying the incoming projectile. This stunned everyone. Tsunade went wide-eyed at what she saw, while Shizune and his bunchins turned to the sound of the chains clinking as they extended. Naruto stared in awe at the chains that came from his chest. Wow, this is so cool. Hey Tsunade Oba-chan, what is this? Is it a Kekkei Genkei? He asked in rapid fire. Tsunade stood frozen. Seeing a blonde with the chains she had known her niece, Kushina, to have along with his other features confer. Med his parents to Tsunade. While Naruto was enjoying his new power, Tsunade walked slowly toward the energetic blonde, eyes wide with robotic steps. Just as she reached him, his golden chains receded into his body. Naruto looked up. Seeing Tsunade's expression he asked, Oba-chan. Are you okay? Tsunade knelt down to his level, before pulling him into a powerful hug shocking Naruto. Oba-san. Tears ran down her cheeks. We are not alone Naruto, she said through her tears. This shocked Naruto. What do you mean Oba-chan? Tsunade continued to hold Naruto close as she said the words that Naruto would never let go of. I know who your parents are. In fact I am your biological Oba-san, Tsunade told him. Naruto was shocked. He had family, the one thing he wanted above anything. Naruto slowly raised his arms, returning the hug Tsunade was giving him as his own tears began to flow. See, can you tell me who my parents were? He asked softly. Tsunade nods as she pulls away. Your Ka-chan's name was Kushina Uzumaki, she started. She was a tomboy, especially when pushed, she started to tell him, effectively calling practice to a close for the two. As she talked, Naruto sat next to Tsunade, leaning into her as she had an arm wrapped around his shoulder. She squeezed his shoulder tightly as he broke down when he was told that his father was the Yondaime. Naruto was crying into Tsunade's shoulder. Why? He whispered. Why did he seal the Kyuubi into me? Tsunade was unsure of what to say that could alleviate the boy she held close in her arms. Deciding to talk about how she knew him, Tsunade spoke. They loved and trusted you above anyone else that could bear this burden. He and your Ka-chan loved you greatly. And while I believe Kushina would have never wanted you to carry the same burden she did, your two-san would have trusted you to be strong enough to handle it, and from what I see he was. Right, she said as she kissed his forehead. Naruto stared up at Tsunade with wide eyes as tears trickled down his cheeks. He latched onto the arms that were wrapped around his waist, holding them close. Tsunade leaned into his back while holding him tightly, showing as much comfort as she could to her grandnephew. After Naruto had calmed down, Tsunade continued to tell Naruto about his parents. One skill your parents were highly proficient in was Fuinjutsu. For your Ka-chan it was expected. After all, those of Uzumaki descent find themselves predisposed to learning the art, claiming that it comes naturally to them. Your two-san, who was not an Uzumaki, was just as proficient, so who knows, maybe you are too. Would you like to find out? Naruto thought about it. If he was to study, then he would be closer to his parents in some way. That was enough of an excuse for him to give him his answer. Yes, he all but shouted with a vigorous nod. Tsunade began to pet his head. Then we shall get started tomorrow, she tells him with a brilliant smile. Despite Naruto learning about his parents, the day quickly came to a close. He was greatly worn out, falling asleep in Tsunade's arms. If he was awake, he would feel embarrassed from resting his head on Tsunade's bust. Despite his position, Tsunade carried the sleeping blonde back to the hotel to lay him down to rest. As she carefully placed Naruto in the bed they shared, Tsunade went out of the hotel in a henge to gather the supple. Wise for Naruto to begin learning Fuinjutsu. If he has his parents' skill in the field, he could definitely learn a skill like applying seals with chakra in no time. As she held him that night, the sensation that Tsunade has been feeling since she had met this boy was becoming stronger. Instead of reminding her of Dan, it was stronger, making her more possessive of the young blonde. As she returned to the hotel, she noticed Naruto still asleep in bed, and based on what she could see, he had presumably woken up to get ready for bed, with Shizune coming out of the shower. "Ah, Tsunade-sama," she said in a whisper, "the shower is free and ready for you." Tsunade gave a nod of appreciation and acknowledgement to her apprentice's statement before setting down her recent purchase and heading into the shower. When she came out, Tsunade noticed Shizune and Tonton had taken to their own bed and were breathing softly. She herself climbed into bed, though this time she didn't bother to sleep a sheet above Naruto. Stroking his cheek lightly, she was surprised when he rubbed against her hand as a small smile seemed to form as he slept. Smiling lightly, Tsunade wrapped an arm around the boy, pulling him into herself, causing him to snuggle into her. Normally she would beat any man that would try what the sleeping blonde had done, however for him she merely kissed the top of his head before she too fell asleep. The light of the morning sun had shone brightly through the now open window of the hotel room that Tsunade and Shizune were using. The light seemed to be able to find just the right spot to hit Tsunade in her eyes. Tsunade let out a low groan. In a low tone, "Shizune, close the curtain," she said as she attempted to shift away from the light only to feel something sniggling into her as she moved. With one eye cracked open she looked down to a mop of spiky, sun-kissed blonde hair. Recognizing who had this shade of blonde hair, Tsunade brought her head down as if to rub her forehead in his soft hair as she maintained her hold on the young blonde, nearly falling back to sleep in the process. Naruto had some light bleeding into the corner of his eyes. Trying to avoid the light and remain asleep, Naruto nestles into his warm pillows, one of which seems to be on top of